September 17th, 2024, the new Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook brings 16 backgrounds, 10 species, 75 feats, and almost 400 spells to game tables everywhere. But will it live up to the marketing? Hey there, adventurers. Welcome back to Short Rest Studios. I'm Judd, and last week, Wizards of the Coast began the promotional blitz in earnest for the 2024 PHB. We got this everything you need to know video, class videos, and a ton of other stuff, hyping the first of the 2024 core rulebooks. I'm bringing you 7 key features of the 2024 PHB, and you want to stick around to the end of this video to find out if they're worth the hype or if they just kind of make me go, eh. Number 1, a new structure. First of all, the intro is short.
We're hoping people will even read the introduction. We made it super short, so
it is short. Yeah.
So they'll read it.
This is the largest ever D&D Player's Handbook, and frankly, the 2014 PHB could have used a better structure. Most RPG books could, but that's another video. According to lead designer Jeremy Crawford, this handbook is structured for easier reference at the game table, easier character creation, and of course, all the new options that are available. There's also a rules glossary that helps streamline chapters of the book. Feature number 2, improved stat blocks.
And because we have 10 years of feedback on the 2014 books, we also knew that we were going to be making some adjustments to our stat block format.
Yes.
To make our stat blocks even easier to run and more fun to run.
Now, this feature obviously applies more directly to the upcoming Monster Manual, which is coming on February 18th, 2025, but it does have an impact on the Dungeon Master's Guide as well as the PHB. There's an expanded creature appendix in the Player's Handbook where we'll see the first evidence of these new, simplified, easier to run stat blocks. Third on the list, heroic inspiration.
Rather than dealing with advantage, which is what Inspiration did in 2014, we realized this rule needs to play better with the rest of the game, and the game is already chock full of ways to get advantage.
In the 2014 rules, inspiration gives you advantage on a d20 roll, but known as heroic inspiration in the 2024 edition, you get to re-roll any roll, attack, healing, whatever. It's a small change, but it could be an important one. Adventurers, I'm thrilled to partner with Into the AM. This isn't just a t-shirt company. These are skilled artisans, and they use the highest quality fabrics and eco-friendly inks to create tees, pants, hoodies, polos, and more with creative and unique designs, superior fit, and superb quality. I'm wearing one of their shirts right now, and I absolutely love it, and I bet you will too. Take the dive and get 10% off your first order at intotheam.com/shortreststudios. Next up, expanded psionic subclasses. We got a taste of some new psionic options back in 2020 when Tasha's Cauldron of Everything came out, but it looks like this Player's Handbook is finally giving us the whole psionic feast. We're getting enhanced psionic subclasses like the Soul Knife Rogue, the Psi Warrior Fighter, and Aberrant Sorcery right in the core game. Our 5th feature of the new PHB, Weapon Mastery. Every weapon in the 2024 Player's Handbook has a mastery property, and certain martial classes have a feature that allows them to use that property. For example, you can use your Great Axe's Cleave mastery property to cut a swath through a horde of minions, or push someone back with your sword, or sweep an opponent's legs with a maul. So it basically codifies a lot of combat tricks DMs have been making rulings for on the fly over the years. What do you think, adventurers? Do any of these features intrigue you, turn you away? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hang around to the end for my full take on these features and what I think they mean for the future of D&D, at least at my table. Next up is the art. We've seen tons of new art already for this new PHB. The cover with an adventuring party and a gold dragon facing down a red dragon. The class art for the fighter. We've seen species art for elves, dwarves, and orcs. In a lot of ways, the 2024 books are doubling down on the art style that we've become accustomed to with D&D books over the 5e era. And finally, number 7 in our list of features of the 2024 Player's Handbook, Reworked Species. So obviously the terminology is changing from race to species in this new core set, but in addition, Goliath, Aasimar, and Orc are all new additions to the PHB. You get some species-specific changes, like the Orc Adrenaline Rush now recharges on a shorter long rest. But to me, the biggest change is this. Remember those ability score boosts you used to get from your race? Those are now tied to your background instead. So adventurers, there's a quick rundown of the 7 key features of the 2024 Dungeons & Dragons Player's Handbook. It's not everything by a long stretch, but I will link to the official Everything You Need to Know video in the description. And drop me a comment and let me know what you're most interested in about the new PHB. So what's the verdict on these features of the 2024 Player's Handbook? The new structure, if they've done it well, it'll make learning the rules easier and make it easier to find stuff on the fly. An actual streamlined structure will definitely help speed up gameplay and generally, make it more fun. The new stat blocks. It remains to be seen if they'll actually be easier or more fun to run, but if they are simplified, like maybe in some of the ways my friend Bob Worldbuilder suggests in this video, I'm amped about it. Honestly, a simplified stat block would be a beautiful thing. As for heroic inspiration, this change comes from feedback. And the fact of the matter is this just codifies the way a whole lot of people were already using inspiration. But those expanded psionic subclasses, yeah, that's cool. You may recall that in my preview of Phandelver and Below the Shattered Obelisk, one of my favorite things was the psionic goblins. The psionics are cool. Weapon mastery is where it does start to get a little tricky for me. Again, the designers have codified what a lot of people were doing anyway. It appears to close the martial caster gap, at least a little. So if it makes fighters a little more fun to play, like maybe closer to the way they function in Pathfinder, it sounds great. But I do have a concern with this feature. In creating this, they've made a fairly complicated rule set even more granular. For newer players or for those who maybe just aren't so naturally imaginative, it could open their eyes to new, more creative gaming. But this kind of granularity can also lead to the opposite. The attitude that I can only do what's on my character sheet. More granular rules will probably lead to less creativity, so I'm not really a fan of this feature. Now, about the art. I said earlier, it's more the style we've become accustomed to with D&D, for better or worse. A lot of it's really nicely done. I know some people have already suggested that the cover art used AI, but honestly, I think they're just a little paranoid about it. However, if you look at the species art for elves, I have to wonder. I'm pretty sure hands and knees aren't supposed to bend that way unless they've made some pretty, severe changes to elven anatomy. I'm not by any means a proponent of AI art in our games, but that's not even really my issue. The first issue I have is that the style of art in D&D, while technically usually very good, has very little character. The creators, making specific reference to the PHB cover art, talked about capturing a moment just before something happens. And that's part of the problem for me. The best art in these books, in my opinion, is action-oriented. Something's already happening. But look at the art in a game like Dragonbane. It's got a style, it's fun, and it still captures the fantastical nature of the setting. I think modern D&D art is not bad. I just find it bland and middle of the road. Now here's the other issue. There is some art, like the fighter, for instance, from the new PHB that I find outstanding, that really speaks to me, that looks like the kind of game world that I want to live in. But then there's a lot of it that honestly makes me think this new edition isn't for me. Look at the dwarf species art. A friend of mine said it looks like a happy meth cooking biker game. I kind of agree. Then there's the orc species art. Now, I know there are people whose role-playing tastes this appeals to, and that is fine. I am not one of them. Orcs used to have pig faces. We've slowly, over the decades, turned them into green humans, and this is pretty much the ultimate depiction of that transformation, in my opinion. And that leads me to the final feature, the reworked species. The big change for me is the removal of species-based ability bonuses. I don't really want to get into whatever political motivations Wizards of the Coast may or may not have had in making this change. And please, no comments about wokeness. I'm not here for that, y'all. But I do think that the orc species art we just talked about is a visual representation of this very rule change. In moving those bonuses to backgrounds instead of species, they've effectively homogenized all D&D species. We now basically have 10 flavors of human. There are things that excite me about the new PHB, but to be honest, I'm not sure it's enough to make me feel that D&D is for me anymore. And that's really sad to me. But also, there are a ton of other games out there that are just begging to be played. But maybe I'll change my mind. Let me know in the comments if you want me to report back in September when the PHB arrives.